Hey, everybody, welcome to another podcast of the Jeff Heilman Project. I am Jessica, and I'm sitting across the table here from Mr. Jeff Heilman, the ultimate project.
Ultimate.
Ultimate project.
Any project half done looks like a disaster. I heard that in a project management book one time, and it's true.
It is. It is. So then we're all just walking disasters.
Most of us.
Well, what
Speak
we're
for
talking
myself.
about for the last 8 weeks, we've been talking about Jeff's 9 daily disciplines. He has a checklist. It is something to behold. And if you're not watching this via our YouTube, you're listening to it over the airwaves. He has a list, and it has got lots and lots of boxes on it. And we've been going through each week on the various different disciplines that he features on the checklist, and then how he puts them on there to be checked off. So we are actually in the 8th discipline, which is spending time with family. And he has, in the previous episodes, described why family isn't closer to the top, why it's at the bottom. But maybe you could just do a little refresh as to why family is number 8 in your 9 daily disciplines instead of, like, say, number 1.
Yeah, it's for me, spending time with my spending time with my family. You and the 7 kids are a unit by yourselves. You guys go and do stuff. You go out into the world. You go to the beach. You go to the store. You go to church. You go to Bible studies. You go to game nights. You go to movies. You go to all those things. And sometimes I participate in those. But for me, to be able to participate in those things is a reward for me. And there was a great quote. I forget which Augmentino book it was. It was either The Choice or Better Way to Live.
I was going to say Better Way
Might have
to
been
Live,
Better Way to
probably.
Live. But he effectively said, and here's a guy who, world famous author, was in World War II, worked in a bomber squadron, I think, with Jimmy Stewart, actually, and ended up getting out of the war and going into insurance, which is not what he wanted to do, but he was feeding his family doing it, and stopping off at the corner bar once or twice a week becomes every night, becomes alcoholism, becomes loss of job, loss of house, loss of family. And he said in Better Way to Live that he learned in his 40s that the best reward we can give ourselves for our hard work is to spend time with our family. That, in other words, spending time with our family is the best reward that we can give ourselves for all the hard work that we do to be providers and income earners. So to me, do my kids need to spend time with me? I would say that they do. They don't need to spend time with me more than I need to provide, more than I need to keep my head on straight, more than I need to stay healthy so that I can continue to produce, more than I need to manage finances, more than I need to manage all the things for my job, business, and investment, short-term and long-term. Those are table stakes for being successful long-term. And so to me, spending time with family, which is episode 8 here, comes after all those things are done. Then I get to spend time with my family.
And we talked earlier in the episodes that should a need arise, the position of attention moves, and we move up. This is a sliding. This isn't necessarily a permanent religion that you've said, hey, these are my 9 daily disciplines and nothing's ever going to come above the other or whatever.
They're values. They're values.
It's their values.
My values, my priorities.
They're a checklist. It is an actual viable checklist on graph paper. We've seen it, in which you can go through and check off each day. Okay, have I done this? Have I done that? So maybe you could tell us, for example, like, what is one of the items under the category of family on your checklist that you actually have to check off, like, every day, or how often you check it?
All right, well, let's take a look. I have it on the checklist so I don't have to remember everything. As far as family. So the first one for family.
Your glasses are on your shirt, by the way. Just, making sure to
might be able to
let
help
you
me
know.
out.
That might help you read.
The first one for family is number 5, which is dinner at 6. Kiss and tuck the kids before they go to bed. Say something nice. Just spend a little time praying with the kids. Knowing when the next family activity is. So today you guys went to the beach. That's a family activity. If it was planned and it's in the calendar and we're all doing it, like we all went to Carmel like 2 weeks ago. That was the next family activity.
This is a perfect example for me about something that, like, do you consider yourself a failure if, for example, you do not get to check off have dinner at 6? Because we're not going to have dinner at 6 every single night.
Not every night.
This is a good example. So
no,
are
but
these
this
just
is about
goals?
This is about a conscious discipline of reminding myself that this is a value to me.
Okay.
That having dinner together at 6 every night as a family, even if it's 12 minutes and the little ones are gone as soon as their mac and cheese cools off and they're ready to go watch TV or whatever, it's still being able to say, look, family mealtime is important. That is a staple of our society and our culture in this family, is the idea of getting together and sharing a meal, replenishing ourselves with nourishment at a time when we're spending time together as a family, relaxing. That is a ritual. It's a recovery mechanism. It's something that you can continue to come back to and count on. And for us to not have dinner at 6 doesn't mean we're bad parents, but I'm going to hold my attention throughout my day that I'm looking forward to that time with my family at 6 o'clock to eat
Now,
dinner.
some people whose name shall remain nameless would look at not being able to check everything off nicely in a row at
Oh,
the
I
end of
check
the
it off.
day to be like failure. Like why even do it if I know I can't? Why would I set myself up to know that I can't do something? So they might only put things on their list that they absolutely positively know they'll be able to check off, like wake up, go to sleep, or they might not do it at all. Or would you advise them to just, even if you've read it and looked at it, you get to check it off? Like, how do you check them all off even if you don't get to do them? Or do you go to bed having
Well, if
blank
I
spaces
won't
on your
check it off, I
checklist?
won't check it off if I want to hold my attention on that throughout the day.
Okay.
So if it's a checklist, if I'm going through and I say, "Yep, dinner at 6, it's on the calendar. We're going to do it tonight. Kids are coming home, what have you." I'm good. I can do that throughout the day. I'll check that off because I know I don't need to bring my attention back to that until it's 6 o'clock. It'll be fine,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the idea of kiss and tuck. I don't kiss and tuck the kids every night before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm holding my attention to that, saying, "Hey, high fives in the hallway," which is making sure that we pass
Yeah.
each other with acknowledgement and being pleasant in the hallways because we have a lot of kids bouncing around inside of a small house. Kiss and tuck is like my reminder that, hey, high fives in the hallway is part of our family culture. You want to kiss and tuck the kids before they go to bed. You want to have dinner every night at 6. And then the other thing is, do I know? And this is like once it's checked off, I release it. I don't think about it anymore that day. But it's the habit of reiteration, over and over reiteration of an idea that gets a habit grooved into the mind. And so I want to make sure that I know when our next family activity is. And right now, our next family activity is Jeffrey's coming into town, right?
Yeah.
So that's the next family activity on the calendar is Jeffrey's coming into town. You're working, preaching tomorrow night, and I've got dinner plans. But as far as a whole family all together, I think the second. I think he comes in on the second.
Well, when this episode airs, it will be the 19th, Friday the 19th. So, hey, everybody, good to see you. Happy Friday, everybody.
Or Tuesday,
Or
the
Tuesday,
next Tuesday
depending on
after
if you're
that. Yep,
watching audio, if you're listening to
that's
only
right.
audio, or if you're watching video. So, I would like to kind of go over I have written in my notes, we decided to have a big family because we're crazy. But other than that, there were some
And we were
pictures
kind of
there
lonely
there were
too.
some
We were kind
pictures
of
in
wanted
our
a
mind. I know I had a
set of
picture.
siblings.
I remember, I think it was Martha Stewart Living Magazine. I was probably 16 years old,
Mm.
16 or 17 years old, and I opened up the Martha Stewart Living Magazine, and there was a picture of a Thanksgiving table like she does, and it had 12 chairs around it, and it was in front of these French doors, these big glass French doors, and it was all set for Thanksgiving. And there was all the browns and the beautiful, rich, walnut colors and the oaks. And you have all the floral arrangements and all the beautiful tables, all the place settings. And I just looked at that, being an only child myself. And I thought, wow, like that's what I want. I want a full table for the holidays. I want, when I get married someday, I want to be able to I want to be able to have a table like that. I want to be able to have all of the place, like the charger plates and the dinner plates and the salad plates and the forks and the knives. Like I want to go all out for holidays because that just, to me, that spoke to me. It spoke to my heart. And so getting at that picture and seeing that picture in my mind and ingraining that picture in my mind, I just thought, well, I think I literally was thinking there's 12 seats, so 6 kids plus their spouses. I wasn't even thinking the like grandkid. I guess they're at the kids table. I was thinking 6 kids and six spouses would be 12. So that's a table set for 12. I didn't think that mom and dad, I didn't think about 14. I thought only 12. So I'm like, okay, well, in order to have this table, I'm going to need to have six kids someday when I grow up, because that's just, so it really solidified my picture
Thanks
in
a
my
lot,
mind
Martha.
of wanting to have six kids, because I wanted it to all be our own intimate family. I wasn't even thinking about like like now that we've been married 27 years and we have
All the
seven children.
friends.
Number one, I didn't think about seven kids, and number two, I didn't think about all the friends and the like the adopted, the Hanoi children that we
Yeah.
end up having. I mean, our table's gone from the I think we have like 24 to 25 every Thanksgiving. So
Yeah.
now in the new picture, the real picture, it's how many tables of 12 are we going to have for
Many
our
tables of 12. Yeah,
Thanksgivings?
no kidding.
So that was my picture of why I wanted to have a big family. I know you had a picture, and this is coming to you. You had a picture, that black and white picture that you show everybody
Yeah.
would you care to describe where your easily, I mean, it wasn't very hard to convince you to have like when I said, "Hey, someday I want to get married, and I'd love to marry you, and I'd like to have six kids." You weren't very resistant. You were like, "Okay, let's do it." As a matter of fact, I mean, you'd still be having kids if you could, but I won't let you.
I'd
So
still be
where
having
did
kids if you could.
exactly. So where did your picture of like what set in your motion in your mind for this amazingly huge family that you wanted to have one day?
Well, I saw a picture of the Kennedy family when I was probably mid-teens, and it was a black and white photo. It was a propaganda photo. I mean,
Andrew
Joe
could
Kennedy
probably pop it up,
probably
but
could.
I don't know if
We'll
he's
see
going
if
to
he
do
can
it.
put
We'll
it in the
surprise.
comments. But Joe Kennedy wanted to be president of the United States, and I didn't know what president of the United States was when I was, early teenager, probably, or 8 or 10, whenever I saw this. But I saw this family, and it's a propaganda photo. I mean, he's saying, "Hey, I'm Catholic, I'm rich, I have a huge family. Vote for me for president." That that was why the photo was taken. But it didn't matter. That none of that mattered to me. The cause behind it and politics and all that stuff, that had nothing to do with it. I just saw this family that I wanted to be a part of that had 9 kids, 7 adjusted for inflation, and it was something that I dreamed of being wealthy. I dreamed of being the patriarch
I think
of.
it's in Hyannisport. I think the picture. I
Probably.
mean,
Yeah, it's
it's
probably
one
at
of
the
their
compound.
family houses at the
Yeah.
compound. They're all wearing suits, and it's just a
Yeah, yeah.
charming.
It's all the
Everyone looks happy.
Teddy Kennedy had a bow. I think he had a bow tie on.
Yeah.
He was probably 8 or 11, somewhere in there, and he was the baby. So, but I saw that family, and they looked happy, and they looked rich. And here's this guy smiling ear to ear, Joe Kennedy, and this beautiful black and white photo with everybody dressed up really nicely. And I thought that would be amazing if I could do that. I don't want to be the Kennedys. I certainly don't want to be in politics, but I did have an image in my mind of creating this patriarchy that I could do, that I could see myself actually doing. And so when you and I met, that seed had already been planted for me. The seed was already in your heart that you would be able to have a large
Mhm.
family. And so it didn't take a lot for me to imagine that we could do this. And the other thing too is that anytime you're in business or politics or just being alive, there are certain things that you can see that need to be done, right? Sometimes the trash needs to be taken out, and sometimes I see it, and sometimes I take it out, and most of the time I don't. But I could see that a patriarchy, a modern day patriarchy of a mom and a dad who stayed married, fell in love, stayed married, and had a big family and created wealth and created influence, that somehow was missing a little bit in the United States of America, where people are massively in debt from student loans, which means they can't pay off the student loans until they're in mid 30s, which means you can't get married until you pay off your student loans. A lot of people think. And so they get married at 35, and maybe they have 1, maybe 2 kids. We start to see population decline, 2 income families, no patriarchy, no sense of scale or moms that want to stay home. That's not part of the modern day media culture anymore. And I think that there's something lost in Americana by saying, oh, 1 kid is enough or 2 kids is enough. Man, if you want to have a lot of kids, I think you should be able to have a lot of kids. We wanted to have a lot of kids. We had 7. And to this day, I don't know anybody in our generation that's been married for 20 plus years and has 7 kids. I'm sure there are. God bless you. Please comment,
Yeah.
like, and subscribe. Um, but uh, um, but we don't see that very often. And when my parents were kids, they saw it quite a bit. They also grew up
Well,
in
I
areas
know
where
that when
that
we
was
were
more
in
common.
Bible college in 2008 and I founded Wholehearted Ministries about marriage and family, one of our mission statements was to whet the appetite for it was like in our very premise, in our very being, that we wanted to make marriage look good. We wanted to make families
Yeah,
look good.
we want
We
to give
wanted
people
to do what we
hope
could to
that they
whet
could
the appetites
also
of others and
marry.
hopefully be able to help kind of educate the country or our local community in whatever way we possibly could on helping them get through family issues, marriage issues, relationship issues so that they too could say like, look, this is this is what it can look like. This is what we would hope that it would look like for others, that yeah, we have our arguments and we have our fights and our kids aren't perfect and we're not perfect either, but it's the, like we said in the last episode, it's the working together that brings intimacy. It's the working together that creates this building block that we call the foundation of our community. Because if we can fix it, what was that old story where the dad is exhausted and his son keeps coming and bugging him, and
Oh, Father forgets.
he's on the recliner, and
Yeah.
and so the son comes in and he's like, daddy, I want to play with you, and dad's like,
Not
no,
now.
not now. And so he gets a Life magazine and he rips out a page, and the dad rips out the page, and
Mm.
there's the world is on it, and he rips it up into little pieces, and he says, okay, kid, go put this together in the other room. It's a puzzle. I just made a puzzle for you. Go put it together in the other room, and when you've got it put together, then I'll play with you. And not like, but 2 minutes later, the kid comes back, and the dad says, "Wow, you put the puzzle together already?" And he's like, "How'd you?" He's thinking, "How'd you find Zimbabwe? And like, how'd you put the Earth back together again?" And the little boy goes, "Oh, it was easy, Dad. There was a picture of a family on the other side." And all I had to do was put the family together, and the world all
The
fell,
whole world
the
fell
whole
into
world
place.
fell into place. And
Yep.
that's so true, because as we put our families together in our own homes, then that radiates, that does a Doppler effect. It ripples
That's
out
right.
into our community and into our state and into our country. And so we want to present to anybody who is listening, anybody who's watching, anybody who wants to send in their information via text, to ask us anything, to bring up these issues so that we can even talk about them live here on the show. We'd love to be able to address you and include you in what we're doing here, because that's what we're about. We're about in our own home first and then going out into the community. And it has taken 27 years for us to go public with this message, and I think partly that is because we've been working on our family from the inside out. We had a lot of stuff that we had to go through, and we had a lot of things that we had to grow through in order to get to where I think we could share these things and these concepts
Yeah,
with
you got to be
others.
comfortable. We're not going to be sharing with you things that we're going through right now. Like, that doesn't do anybody any good. It makes us look like whiners, and it
You don't
makes you
testify
feel.
until the testimony's
Yeah,
over.
you talk about things that you've come through. And I remember hearing a friend of mine said that there's 3 types of people in the world, and especially in America, that people listen to. And the first 2 you can't stand, and the other one's great. The first one is people who have just gravy trained the whole life, first chair, violin, basketball team, captain, magna cum laude, and all the way through school, and first employee at a huge public startup that goes over, and 27 years old, they're worth $300 million, and they're married, and everything's
Never
perfect.
have a problem
And they
ever
never have a
again.
problem. They don't have a hangnail. They don't have a tax return that has a period or a T cross T out of place. I mean, those people, nobody wants to listen to somebody like that. I don't. They don't have anything to offer. What did they do? I was like the comedian. High school? How'd you get through it? Like, first grade, second grade, there's the struggles
Yeah.
are not noteworthy. So if somebody just up and to the right until they're a billionaire at 26 or 5, they don't have a lot that people want to hear about. The second kind of people who are obnoxious and nobody wants to listen to are the folks that can never seem to get over the hump of whatever their issue is, right? The hypochondriacs who are always talking about, oh, my back pain and oh, this and oh, nerve damage. And did you hear about so-and-so's toe came off or whatever? And they're always talking about things that they cannot overcome. And nobody wants to listen to those people either. They've never overcome something, or somebody who's never had to overcome something, or they just stay stuck. But people who have gone through real issues, Jessica and I are like those people. We are those people. Our audience is made up of almost entirely people who have gone through stuff in their lives, and they've come out the other side. And then they go into another challenge and then come out the other side. And then eventually we catch people who are in the middle of something, and when they hear about struggles that we might have gone through or that Jessica might bring up, they can go, oh, well, if they've gone through tough times and come out the other side, and I've gone through tough times and come out the other side, then, hey, maybe the thing that I'm going through right now is not so
And I
it's
am
not so bad.
super excited. I'm so glad that you brought this up
What's that?
because we haven't told this story yet. And
Okay.
Andrew's over here going, you guys need some new material. I'm trying to remind him that he's heard all this material for his whole life. This is new material, but however,
Might be new to
this
you.
one may be new to him as well. And Mark, this one is for you. Please, would you tell us a little bit about the period of time which involved a grown man having a paper route and driving
I was grown.
60 miles for said paper route?
Almost 70.
And what we were going through at the
Yeah,
time
I'll
as
happily
to,
talk
I
about
mean,
it.
I believe there was a
into
pregnancy
that.
involved, there was a job loss, there was like a 7-day period of. So please tell us about how old were you when you had your paper route? We were in San Diego, so that would
Yeah,
have
I
been
was
23
28.
years ago. So tell us, please, what makes a 28-year-old grown man have a paper route? And how do you go
Well,
from having a paper
yeah.
route to working at this is a long podcast, many episodes.
Anybody wants to look up the address that we lived at, where they have bars on the windows.
Probably shouldn't do that because
What's
there's
that?
people that still live there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, there's bars on the windows whether they live there or not. But we lived in Escondido in the apartment, which the main appeal to that apartment was that it was the absolute cheapest 2x1 in San Diego County in the For Rent magazine.
I liked it had a backyard.
Had a backyard. Yep, it did.
It was about
4 square feet.
I was gonna say it was about 4 feet by 4 feet, but it had a little back patio.
Had a little back patio. Yep, and it had a carport, which meant that dust on the car took a couple extra days.
It just goes the dust went in
pile up.
sideways instead of from the top.
Exactly right.
But yes,
yeah, talking about tough times. Are we sure we didn't cover this? Maybe
we haven't told the paper route story.
So
Specifically the paper route, and I would like
Yeah.
there was a yeah. I remember going because I'm like, oh my God, he's working so hard because you had to be up at like 2:00 in the morning. Did you have to fold your own papers? Because I seem to kind of vaguely remember
because
you
the
folding
papers
your own
came
papers.
in a like a bolt,
Okay.
a stack. I think they came in stacks of 50,
All right.
and then they were zip tied. There was a big yellow plastic zip tie which you could cut yourself on. They were
Right.
they were nasty. So you had to pull the zip tie. Were wrapped pretty tightly, bound binder. Have to pop that off, and they would deliver how many it was. I think I had 115 or 118 newspapers.
And then you had to take them out of the thing and you had to put them in individual plastic baggies, right? Or something?
Well, I chose plastic baggies. You had to pay for them. You had to buy your baggies because it was your own business.
Buy your baggies.
But the muscle memory of doing that versus putting the rubber band, and then the rubber bands would snap, and you're just like, you're so frustrated because you drop the paper, it lands on the ground in the water, and then you
Talk
get
about pressure. Okay, so you have to have all 120 some odd papers prepared, put into bags.
Yeah.
And you have a delivery time that the papers have to get there by.
You got to be out by 7:30. You got to be on the doorstep
So
by 7:30.
you have to go through your whole route,
by 7:30.
which was 60 miles.
68 miles.
Sorry.
It was the
Mark is
one
dying right now. I
newspaper
can see
route.
it.
It was the reason I could get it. It was the newspaper route nobody wanted. I mean, there were these little families of people that was their business. Is they would do 300 or 400 newspapers a day, and you could make $4,000 a month doing that, right? If you got tips and stuff, you could make about $4,000 a month doing that. I did not make $4,000
I
a
think
year.
you made like
I don't think I made
700.
$4,000 the entire time I did it. But I had 117 newspapers. Oh, and that was the other thing. They would have multiple. They would do 300 papers for North County Times, and then they would go do the other newspaper job, which would be another 2 or 3 or 400 papers. So they were doing 500 or 600 papers a day. I was doing like 100 papers a day, but it would take the same time because the route was so long. So I'd drive like 3 miles out to have some farmer who had horses, and I'd throw this one newspaper and then drive 6 miles back to the next subdivision, walk out and scuff,
I'm
scuff,
trying
scuff
to
up
remember if our window even was electric at the time.
Dude, I had
it
this
probably would
240
be.
GL Volvo sedan. I was actually very happy with that car. It was well made and it held up pretty well. It just was very not in good shape. But I borrowed $1,500 from my mom to buy this car when we lived in Dallas from our downstairs neighbor at the apartment building. A guy, I don't know what country in Africa he was from, but he was
Beautiful man.
he was cool. I don't remember his
Friendly.
name, but he was a cool dude, and he was
Cool.
like always hanging out.
Yeah.
Smell weed coming. Smell of weed.
It was pretty relaxed.
He got herbal daily. Yeah. But
I
we had this
remember
car.
you'd wake up at like 2:00 in the morning, and I remember thinking,
I had to be
man,
out the door at 2:15.
Daddy works so hard because we had 2 kids at the time, and I was pregnant with our third. I was like, Daddy works so hard. I think I'll go. I remember one time I went on the ride with you.
Oh my God.
And it
I can't
was
imagine
like
how sick you must have got.
only one time.
Yeah, because there's
I
a lot of
can't do that.
there's a lot of starting and stopping on the paper route because you're 2 feet, 2 doors, 2 blocks, and then you turn around, go around, and it gets to where you just know the things, and you're throwing papers out both sides, and you get your music going or your Tony Robbins
I think
tapes.
now that you're talking about the next episode, because Andrew and I were trying to figure out how we were going to do an episode like totally dedicated to the many moons, the many phases of the Jeff Heilman project, of all of the different projects you've taken on.
Many delays.
But I think what we should do is, at the end of the day, it's all been for the family. It's all been with family motivation. I think we should just do part 1 and part 2. So I think this is family part 1.
Family part 1.
And then we'll continue talking about all
Family
of
part
your
2.
positions for family part 2.
Bludgeonings that I took.
Exactly. All of the continued jobs that you've had, because there's just so many awesome just obstacles and overcoming. Because what I wanted to, and the reason why I bring this up is in the next episode, I really want to talk about every shot counts, and the very fact that this job, even throwing papers, was a shot that counted, because purely for the fact that you were locked into your vehicle for a 60-mile drive every day, and you were listening on your tape recorder to, that was your master's in success. Like all of these different positions that were getting us closer and closer to the end goal have been setting you up, that you've either had time to drive and listen to podcast. Like back then it would have been tape cassettes. I remember you going on your paper route with your Walkman in one ear, and then having to like open it and then flip the tape and then close the tape and then look at the, you're getting your Tony Robbins download, you're getting your success tape downloads. And so like that is a shot that will count. And so don't talk about every shot counts yet. That we're going to save that for the next episode. And we're going to talk about being proximity to the hole and all that stuff in the next episode. So you guys got to tune in, because you're going to want to continue these family part 1 and family part 2. But for the rest of family part 1, the paper route was, I guess the question was, why did you take because you had didn't you have 2 other jobs, and you weren't just doing the paper route.
I had 5 jobs that year, but they weren't all concurrent.
You had at least 2.
I had a job at Radix One that was coming off. That was 2002. January 1st, 2002, I started the paper route.
Okay.
So that was 20 years ago. I would have been.
But what was your day job? Because that was just a night.
Radix One.
Part of the reason why you chose a paper route was because it was a night job. Because it was something that you could do early, right?
I did the paper route. Well, so a buddy of mine and I had an apartment cleaning business, and he took me to school on work ethic. And he was like, what was that guy in Oregon who ran track? Steve Prefontaine.
Yeah.
Like he would just get kicks out of crushing the competition with regard to just obliterate, and basically in running so fast that they would run faster than they could handle.
He was competitive about everything. I remember I'd be like, I stayed up till 2, and he'd be like, I stayed up till 3.
I stayed up till 3. Yeah.
Like,
So when I started getting us all the jobs, And I did. I had a lot of apartment jobs. But that's why we merged back the businesses because I couldn't do all the work that I could close, and he needed more work and I needed more help. So we just ended up splitting the business down the middle. We did that successfully for 2 years: painting, cleaning, chimney sweeps, fence post building, um, job site cleanup. It was great. But he wanted to take it to another level, and so he got a union job at UPS in the mornings, and he worked from three to I think he worked 3:30 to 7:30. He worked a 4-hour shift loading trucks out of a chute, and was working for UPS, and then he would show up at 9 for us to be ready to go clean apartments for 10 hours, and then at that point we were both in multi-level, so we'd go out and do multi-level business at night, and he was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
So that motivated you to find
That
something that you
so
could
that
do.
gave me that planted a seed that when September 11th hit in 2001, at the end of 2001, and then I couldn't get any meetings in my day job selling enterprise app
Yeah,
integration
everybody was
software.
they
No,
weren't spending money.
nobody would take a meeting. I mean,
Yeah.
it was the airports were shut down. Nobody would take a meeting. I couldn't give away a lunch or a dinner with anybody, and so I had to do something else. I had my base salary in a company that was failing and would eventually fail, and I needed another couple $1,000s a month to pay rent. So I got this job delivering newspapers. I'm like, I could do this between 2 and 7, and then go do my day job from 8 until 6, and at least then I could sleep. If I got to bed by 7:30, I could get a full 5.5, 6 hours in before I had to get up and go do the paper out. And I would never recommend that anybody do that ever. Don't ever get a paper out. That's the dumbest thing ever. It was
Don't get a 60-mile
no,
round
not
trip
the way I
paper
did
route.
it. Not when you're 30 years old and basically have to change your personal
But I think
emergency
that this is
contact
also
information to your
important.
mom.
It's also important to remember that this is pre-internet. This is
Right.
pre
Yeah.
cell phone. I
Yeah.
mean, these were days when if you were going to do something at 2 o'clock in the morning, it would have been truck or newspaper or
Something you could
something
do
that
off
you do.
hours that wasn't
I mean,
retail.
you certainly weren't going to go to the bar and like be a bartender or anything
Not
like
at 2 in
that.
the morning.
Not
No,
at two
that's
o'clock
when
in the
they
morning.
closed.
So these were just some of the things. I mean, there's such a this new gig economy that we're in. There's
Yeah.
so
God, you can
many
work
different
24/7
ways
now. It's
that
awesome. You can work from
you
home.
can work, and you
You can
can
sell
also
stuff
involve your
online.
family, and you can be a part of your family. Part of this episode, as far as doing things for the family, as far as going out of your way. I mean, anybody clearly wants to be a great dad, wants to be a great provider, wants to be able to provide for their family. The way that we are structured, the way that we've decided, because we wanted to have as many kids, is the structure has been that I would be the one to stay home and either
Yeah,
do
and
a
you work
business
you
or
work just as hard, if not harder, than I
correct.
do every
And it
day,
can go
and
either
it's
way. It doesn't
needed.
need to be
Yeah,
a male or female
we've got
thing.
friends. We got a friend in Texas where she's a corporate
Yeah, executive.
executive and does really well, and he stays home with the kids, and she does a really nice job of um, not making a big deal about the fact that she's the woman, and
Yeah, no,
she's not like
they
to
don't
wear the
look at
pants. They don't look at
the
it that
roles
way.
like that.
It's not gender defined at
Somebody
all,
the
and
whole
he's happy and she's happy. So who cares what anybody thinks about?
I think the whole bottom line when you decide to have children is that it's a parenting process, and when you decide to go beyond just donating your
Yeah,
egg and donating your sperm in order to become a child, in order to make a child, you need to decide that you're going to parent. And parenting
yeah,
involves two people coming in agreement that, like, you very often have given me the response, not like you've deferred to me in the area of how the children are raised, how their education.
yeah. I
If
think
you have
deferred is accurate.
if you have a suggestion, if you have a idea, if you're seeing something,
Or
you're
if I think something
involved.
needs to be done,
Yeah, exactly. You're
you'll
involved, but you've deferred, just like I've
yield to
deferred
that.
to you to be able to make some, a lot of the major financial decisions, and where are we going to work? Where are you going to
Yeah,
work? Where's your career going to be? But
yeah,
in doing this, we have this communication between the two of us
yeah.
on who's going to be,
Yeah, I
what
don't mess with you raising the kids.
right now. And
That's
I certainly don't
why
try.
would
I
I?
don't circumvent you from being a part of raising
No,
the kids. I want you to be a part of it,
no.
and we have
But
regular
the thing is we're
conversations and
building
regular
something
meetings.
that is, you need a lot of money, a lot of kids, a long time, a big career, a lot of assets, stocks, businesses, real estate, investment accounts, cash accounts, art, cars, houses, land, toys, clothes, vacations, books, libraries, jewelry. I mean, we're accumulating this mass
I
of
always think of it as a barge. All right, when I close my
yeah,
eyes, I think of it as this big military
it's like a
battleship.
military operation with
It's this huge,
storehouses
it
and
doesn't move fast.
trunks of
It takes a ton of
gold
effort and money.
and there's an adage that says if you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. And we wanted to go far. We wanted to build something that meant something to our children. We have the relationships that Andrew and Ash and Teddy and Ness and they all grow up together. And Jeff and Joe and Matto on the top end of the stack, they're all buddies and they're close and they call and text each other. And Jeffrey comes back to visit for birthdays and um, they're we have a phone. Jeffrey was really into Batman, so we got a phone, a dedicated landline phone. I don't even know
It's
what the
red.
number is. And it's red. And when it rings, we know it's Jeffrey or a telemarketer. But nobody has that number. And Jeffrey's the only one that calls. And they can call. The kids that don't have phones yet can call their brother directly, even though he doesn't live at home anymore. And so we had this picture, this obsession. It was a magnificent obsession around the family, around that the family could be something of value in and of itself, an asset that was a self perpetuating tree of life. And that was how we looked at it. Other people might look at families differently, and that's fine. We're not here to judge anybody. But we did feel like there was value in setting a standard that said, put a priority on family and we execute and we have family culture of high fives in the hallway and a motto, which is don't go to bed mad, and a bunch of children that are homeschooled so that we can raise them in the standards and the culture and the ideals and the philosophy and the faith and the values that are important to us, that we could do something that would endure beyond our own lifetimes. So that's what this podcast is about. It is a documentary, is it's an archive for the children, public for the world, whoever wants to listen in, that the kids would know what their mom and dad did, what they stood for, what they were focused on, what their magnificent obsession was during the years where you and I have the energy to communicate these things for permanent record.
And I'd like to also, I think that somebody listening could pick up on the, oh, well, it's like their Judeo Christian values and they just want to indoctrinate their kids on these values. And I'd like to just take that and immediately
Sure.
address that head on and say that the way that we decided to educate, and this is one of those times when my husband so lovingly defers to me educating the children. The way that I've chosen to educate the children is to not push them into a Judeo-Christian religious right wing, left wing, not to push them into any particular belief. What I noticed lacking through going through the school system myself and then going into college and going into childhood development in college myself was that they were beginning to lose the funding to be able to present children with arts, entertainment,
Any
philosophy,
alternatives to STEM?
alternatives to any type of creative alternatives to STEM, the ability to be able to introduce our children to the masters, to Da Vinci, to Plato, to Socrates, to being able to introduce them to, Monet and Renoir and like the artists and then the classical composers, Beethoven, I'm picking out some of the well-known ones because these are the ones that people are most going to be familiar with of our generation. But that throughout the years, the generations, these future generations, were losing in the public school system this very, what I would call and consider classically trained children. And so when we're saying that this is what we value more than anything, I think, is the upholding of a world class rounded education, which is inclusive of
100%.
everything from, the Iliad to even Malcolm Gladwell, who we've referred to many times before, because it's
Sense and
always been my
Sensibility, Jane
desire to be
Austen,
able to have
Shakespeare.
a classical education for our children and to see that the public school system was failing in that. And since we were going to
And
have
let's
this,
be fair, right? They're failing because they're out of money. It's not failing
absolutely.
because they're evil or failing because their
And
school teachers are
and they're
terrible.
on
That's
an
not the case.
archaic system. This A through F is an archaic way of grading. It
I
is
agree.
not it is not substantiative of creative thought.
Yep.
But we knew that since we were going to have 6 children, because even when we had one, and I started looking at the price of private education, looking for that classical education that I was looking for our children to be great. I wanted my kids to grow up playing tennis. I wanted them to know what lacrosse was. I wanted them to be able to study the masters. I want their summer trips to be.
And
I mean,
travel
I'm
and go to the
dreaming of
mansions at Newport and
right.
Rhode Island
I'm
and go to
dreaming of like
Manhattan.
this
And
Leave It to Beaver, this utopia of education for my children, and I'm looking at private schools going, Harker Academy is how much? Going
50
like
grand, 60
how
grand
am
a
I
year.
going to do that times 6? How am I
Yeah.
going to do that times 7? So it was kind of like, oh well, tag, you're it, because I was unwilling to let a government system which produces more often than not government employees, and not that that is a bad position to be in. It was just
No, a
not
lot
the
of people go and
classical
get jobs with the government.
education. It was not the class it was not in line with the classical education for our family that I had always dreamed of wanting to be able to gift our children. And so we are getting onto this subject because I just wanted to pull out what you were talking about as far as like these are our values, and I would like to make sure that everybody is clearly understanding that our values, while we uphold the Bible, while we uphold our beliefs in Jesus Christ, are not solely what we are impressioning the people that are around us and even our own children, because what we were looking at for our own children was a classically trained education that was a world point of
Right.
view from what is it like in the Ukraine right now? What is going on in, you know, Taiwan, in China, in North Korea, South Korea?
Yeah.
Let's look at this
Where do
thing
these
from a whole
ideologies
global
come from?
perspective.
Why
Exactly.
is North Korea and South Korea two separate countries? What's the ideology between those two? What is the DMZ, and why do people have show of force, military flights over it? Why is Russia so mad at Ukraine? And
Yes.
and what is Putin's position? And can we come alongside the Ukrainians and say, okay, we're supporting you remaining an autonomous state, but let's try to get inside of
And
Putin's head and
what
figure
is
out
communism? What is socialism? What are these things?
what are
Let's
they
not
doing?
run from and
Yeah.
say capitalist America is the
Hey,
only way,
everybody thinks
and
like
we're gonna
us,
come
and
and you're gonna get raised kids like this,
yep,
and you better believe like we
yep,
believe, or you're out of the family. No, it's
yeah,
it's answering
we had
all of
enough of
these.
that.
It's taking all of these questions and encouraging our family members to ask as many questions as they possibly can. And if we don't know the answers, we're gonna find out those answers.
Yeah, and that's why I love the way that we've had some folks in the media who've lost their jobs recently because of what they've talked about, and I love that they are going and taking their influence onto other platforms and continuing to endorse freedom of speech,
Hmm.
because speech is foundation. It's foundation level freedom. That's why it's the First Amendment.
Hmm.
The First Amendment is the right to speak our mind. And so this podcast is simply a view into an American couple's lives with our kids and our business and the work that we do and how we make money and how we raise our kids and how we stay fit by going to the gym and what we do for dinner. We're trying to provide a window pane into what it is that we're doing, that it might encourage other folks to be be clear. Just be clear about what it is that you want. What are your values? We're not saying you have to have our values. If somebody said, "Well, I want to have your exact values," I'd be like, "Why? Why wouldn't you get your own?" We're
Yeah.
just saying that these are ours. They work for us, and get your own. Get your own and live by them. And are you enjoying the opportunity to live in a country where you can have your own values manifested in your own family and your own children? I think that's a
So speaking
remarkable
of
opportunity.
individualization and each of our children have their own amazing individual characteristics. They none two are the same. They are each individual beautiful people, and we're talking about freedom of speech and giving each child their ability, and it's our biggest desire always for them to have established voices of their own and be able to
Right.
have their own sound and their own voice. You do something that I think that you would like to encourage in this family episode, part one, before we time out in the next 10 minutes. You do something that I believe, I think it might have been Dave Eggers that taught you about date days with each of the children, but we
Yep.
would highly encourage, it's on the checklist. Um,
Yep.
Talk about for a second how you create a relationship, having 7 kids, how you create a relationship or what you feel draws you close with each of your children as the individuals that they are.
Well, and I think we started with Jeffrey and Joe years ago, and I'm not perfect about it, but the goal has been that I would spend some one-on-one time. It could be a walk down halfway down our path. We have strips of walking path separated by surface streets here in the neighborhood, and one of the strips is exactly a quarter mile from tip to tip. And the one tip is, you know, the trailhead, if you will, for this is just 2 doors down from where we live. It's on the other side of the house from our immediate next door neighbor. There's a walking trail there. And so sometimes I'll take Nessie and we'll just go for a walk for 15 minutes. And that'll be our date day for the week if that's all I get. Now we have lots of time in the hallway and time at dinner and time holding hands and time at church and time in the car and time in bed and time snuggling, time waking up, time going to bed, bath time. But to have one-on-one time with dad, that's an example of something that I get so that I can wash my hands of any narrative down the trail that says you should regret not spending more time with your children because you work as hard as you do. Do I think it's valuable for the kids? I think it's absolutely valuable
I
for the kids.
remember it started when Jeffrey was a little guy, our oldest was a little guy, and they had that free Lego of the month. And
Mm,
you and Jeffrey would go down to the mall and you would wait in
yeah,
line and you would get a free Lego because one day per month they would give out like a little free
that
Lego
was a long time ago.
mini figure or a little Lego set.
Yeah,
And that became the start of like date day. And so that was the
that's
thing
right.
that you and Jeffrey did together. And
Yep,
then I know that you like today you went and took Washington and you went and putted
yep.
golf
I went and
balls
putted
and
golf balls with Washington for an hour, and I went for a walk with Joe for probably 30
yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Spend some one-on-one time with him and
Did you
talk.
learn that from Dave Eggers? Was he the one that talked to you about date days or
I think
establishing date days?
Dave certainly helped with it. I think also was that concept that Augmentino lost his family at 37.
Mhm.
That rather than saying your word is to go drinking with the boys, condition yourself, change the wiring, and make
Mhm.
it so that your greatest reward for your hard work. What the statement is the greatest reward. Make the greatest reward for your hard work to spend time with your family.
I know that my grandma had a neighbor that had, I believe she had 6 kids, and my grandma had 4 of her own. And she said she asked her neighbor about the having the 6 kids, and the neighbor said the only regret that she had was that it always felt like they were only ever passing each other because there were so many of them that there was never a time. So clearly what my grandma was trying to communicate to me and what we were learning from that woman was that you've got to put it in your calendar to spend time with your family, and you've got to put it in the calendar if you have a large
Not
family.
going to do it otherwise.
Yeah, if you have a large family and you'd like to spend one-on-one time with them, that you really have got to put it in your calendar to do that or prioritize it in some
That's what
way.
it does seem that to be the
And because
case.
it just time just slips and you
Yeah.
will find yourself just passing each other in the
And we
hallway.
talk
So,
about all the stuff with legacy and the kids, and we talk about all the things that we're trying to do right. And I think that's good. I think hopefully it'll be helpful to people to hear about it. But we made a lot of mistakes too. And I don't want people coming away from this thinking like that we think that we just have it all together. Interesting story. Zeb Evans, who's the founder of ClickUp, which
mhm.
is a tool that I use during the day for project management, that's been very helpful for me. I was watching an interview with Zeb Evans, and he was talking about he had made this company into a very successful startup. And when you start making tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, a lot of things change for you. Obviously, people want access to jobs, access to money, access to power, access to donations, but you get access as a result of your celebrity to people that a lot of people can't get time with. And so he was invited by Richard Branson to go spend a week on his private island in the Caribbean. And he said his biggest takeaway from that was he's sitting there playing tennis or playing cards or something. And he said, you know, Zeb, because Zeb's like 28 years old, multi-billionaire. And he said, you know, Zeb, everybody thinks that they see the success in the business and the regimented discipline and organization and structure that our companies are run by, and they attribute that to us and our being all knowledgeable and stuff. And people think that we have it all figured out. And I'm here to tell you, I'm 78 years old or whatever he is now, Sir Richard Branson. He says, and I'm here to tell you what I'm still figuring it out.
Mhm.
None of us, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, none of us have it all figured out. And to think that we have it all figured out is really doing a disservice to the people that are in the trenches, trying to get things going, trying to figure out what to do. I have one friend of mine who's trying to figure out how to get his 3 kids into the same private school so that they can all grow up together. I have another friend of mine who's trying to ramp a business after selling a business to a partner. I have another friend who's trying to find a business after he sold a business and has parked some cash in real estate holdings. I have another friend of mine that's in between huge corporate jobs right now, and he's taking some time off and resting. So, and he's got a marriage coming up here soon. So, we have all these events and aspects of our life that we're trying to accomplish. And to think that anybody else actually has it figured out is ridiculous. And to think that Jessica and I think or are professing that we have it figured out is simply not true.
Now, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about, I think what can come and appear as being idyllic. What I've noticed with the more successful the people have become, that like financially successful people that we've associated with and that we've hung out that have become our good friends, is it appears that people that are extremely disciplined and the more successful that they become are super picky, really picky. And if you're not comfortable with being around picky people, it can become annoying. But what I've
Successful people are really
noticed,
picky.
yeah, they're really picky because, and
Interesting.
here's why. They have understood and come to understand that their nervous systems are that
Finely tuned.
the human nervous system in general is so fragile
So true.
that your environment, if you're not super picky, like how come this is why Steve Jobs only had black shirts hanging in his closet. This is why Jen Johnson from Bethel Church, and I've got her book around here. She talks about she only wears a black, like she literally only wears black tank tops or black t-shirts because when you are not picky about when you allow yourself to be bombarded by 1,000 different colors and 25 different options and 1,600 pairs of shoes, and you're not picky to the point of creating in your environment peace and something extremely calming and relaxing, what ends up happening is that you cannot relax, and
Yep.
the more demands that you have on you, the more things that you're having to control, the more successful you become, the less stuff in your environment that is not peaceful, then you just get to the point where you toss all that stuff out. And so people will come into our home, or they'll see us talking, and they'll be like, "Wow, Jeff and Jessica, they never argue, they never cuss at each other, they never." And there's a reason why we don't go that far and why we don't do those things, is because our nervous systems, we are very picky about what we talk about. We're very picky about where we allow our minds to
Yeah, I
go.
get my car washed
We're very
twice
picky.
a week. I don't like driving
And so that
a dirty car.
pickiness
It bothers
that
me.
we have, that standard, those standards that we have to uphold, when somebody who isn't that, when somebody is not used to living in an environment of peace and calm and totally like, wow, whenever I come over, I can just sit down and totally relax because there's nothing, there's not piles here and baby toys there, and I'm tripping over this and
There
I'm
used to
tripping
be.
over that. it's not there anymore, but it's not there anymore because we're so good about cleaning. It's not there anymore because we don't collect it anymore. It's not there anymore because we've gotten better
Doesn't
and better and
stay
better
unkempt
about
that long.
not bringing it in.
That's
And
right.
so when people do come into our environment and they go, "Ah," like,
We had a new couple over
"Ah,"
last night. It was
like,
really
"How can
fun.
you do this?" It's because through the test of time, we've come to understand
Standards.
that when you can learn, like, no is your most valued word. No, and not today, maybe tomorrow, but no, no. When you can learn how to successfully say no to obligations, no to extra things that are screaming for your attention. When you can learn that you're going to be propagandized, you're going to be commercialized, you're going to be yelled at all day, every day to buy, buy, buy. And when you can learn to just say no and say, my wardrobe consists of this, my furniture consists of this, my desk consists of this, then it ends up becoming very peaceful for you. And when others come into your environment, they
They
too
take part in
feel the
that.
peace,
Yeah,
and
that's exactly
they
right.
go, "Ah."
That's really great. I remember Jerry Seinfeld did a episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee, and they had a Rolls Royce Dawn, which is the convertible. I don't know if they still make the Dawn, but they used to, and it was a beautiful car. And the turn signal, he would turn the turn signal, and it would click, 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 click. But then when you would push the turn signal back up, or when you would finish your turn, it would do a soft. Toilets have soft closes. This would have a soft return to center.
Yeah.
And he joked and he said, for that guy who's just got one too many ticks in his life,
Can't handle that one last click.
can't handle that one last click. But I think that there it really is something to that. I Before I went to the gym yesterday, I got out and dusted off and vacuumed out the carpets in my car, and I'd have it washed. And I had two handfuls of paper cups and plastic bottles and stuff to take to the recycle. I put it in the armrest if I'm desperate.
Yeah.
Um, but I like having a beautiful environment, quiet,
It's
calm,
peaceful.
peaceful, little bit of music. And I've been experimenting with when you get into music, there are so many nuances to even a single song. But I've been on a jazz kick for the last couple of years, and we've gone through the Big Spiderbeck, which is a little, oh, he might have been an alcoholic. Then you have a little bit less jumpy, and then you get into Louis Armstrong and Buddy Bolden and the guys who really founded jazz late 1800s, early 1900s. And then you get into, I think I listened to,
I know you were big on Coltrane
I
there for a
did
while.
I did Coltrane for about 3 weeks. I did nothing but Miles Davis for like 3 months. I just did tons of Miles Davis. And then I'm like, who's the clarinet? Like we crushed it with Coltrane and tenor sax, and we went down the trail with cornet with Louis Armstrong, and then Benny Goodman is clarinet. So that's what I've been doing, and so I've got Benny Goodman on my all the time, just repeat, listening to all the different Benny Goodman songs.
You're finding your sound. You're feeling
Yeah,
your
just
space.
enjoying simple and calm aesthetic, and that is what we try to provide for our family, right?
And we will continue to talk about it. This has been a wonderful hour that we've got to spend with family
Thanks
part
for
one.
coming to our hour.
I can't wait to talk about it. I can't wait to continue the conversation in Jeff's family disciplines part two.
Job loss.
Just the multiple jobs that you've had. How do you raise a family while you go through 40 million different jobs? How do you continue to keep your head up? What is the proximity what is the whole that we're going, like, what is the end? What does the end picture look like? So keep tuning in. Tune into us next week. We look forward to seeing you and your beautiful face on our YouTube broadcast. We're so glad that you tuned
And thanks
in.
for all those people watching the shorts. Where did those people come from?
Yeah, check out our YouTube
A couple
shorts.
of them are getting over 1,000, 2,000 views. So mostly the ones with her
That's
in them.
pretty awesome. And don't forget to try out our texting service if you have any questions and if you would
number will
like
be
to reach
posted in the
out
link
to us. We look forward to talking to you next week. Bye-bye.